Is it possible for a global phenomenon to vanish into thin air, only to resurface as a completely different person? In the summer of 2018, a 13-year-old girl from County Durham stepped onto a stage in Los Angeles and quite literally changed the trajectory of televised talent competitions forever. Courtney Hadwin wasn't just a singer. She was a glitch in the matrix, a shy, stuttering teenager who transformed into a shrieking, soulful banshee the moment the music started. But as we move through 2026, the industry is buzzing with a much darker, more complex narrative. The viral videos of that new Janis Joplin have been replaced by a gritty, independent artist who seems to be actively at war with her own legacy. Today, we're looking past the golden buzzers to uncover why the biggest voice of a generation decided to burn her bridge to superstardom and start a fire of her own. But the real mystery isn't why she left the spotlight, it's what she found in the shadows that changed her forever. When Courtney Hadwin signed her massive deal with Simon Cowell's Syco and Arista Records, the industry expected a streamlined, chart-topping pop star who could bridge the gap between retro soul and modern radio. However, investigative reports from within the label's orbit suggest that the Golden Girl was actually living in a gilded cage. Sources close to the production team during those early years describe a high-pressure environment where Courtney was coached to maintain her shy persona while being pushed toward a bubblegum pop sound that she fundamentally despised. There are long-standing whispers of creative stifling, where her original compositions, which leaned into heavy, distorted rock, were allegedly buried in favor of safe, commercial covers. The conflict became so intense that by the time her initial contract obligations were met, the relationship had completely fractured. It wasn't just a disagreement over music. It was a battle for the soul of an artist who refused to be a puppet. Insiders claim the label's attempt to sanitize her image led to a deep-seated resentment that eventually forced her to walk away from millions of dollars in potential earnings. This wasn't a girl who lost her voice. It was a woman who refused to sell it to the highest bidder, even if it meant risking her entire career. But as the contracts were torn up, a new and much more controversial chapter was beginning in secret. The period between 2019 and 2025 has often been described by fans as the Great Silence, but behind the scenes, it was a time of intense legal and personal reconstruction. Reporters tracking her movements noted that Courtney virtually disappeared from the Hollywood circuit, retreating back to the UK to live a life that looked nothing like that of a global star. During this time, speculation ran wild. Some suggested she had suffered a total burnout, while others whispered about legal entanglements that kept her from releasing new material. What we now know is that she was navigating the complex process of gaining independence from her former management. This hiatus wasn't about rest, it was about survival. Sources indicate she spent these years in underground studios in London and Manchester, collaborating with fringe producers who encouraged her to embrace a sound that major labels found unmarketable. This was her darkest hour, a time when she faced the very real possibility of being forgotten by the public. Yet, it was during this isolation that the 2026 version of Courtney Hadwin was truly forged. She traded the glitz of Hollywood for the grime of the indie scene, building a new foundation away from the prying eyes of the paparazzi. However, when she finally decided to step back into the light, the world wasn't prepared for the jagged transformation she had undergone. The release of Little Miss Jagged in early 2026 sent shockwaves through the music community, not because of its sales, but because of its sheer aggression. The Courtney Hadwin we see today has traded the schoolgirl outfits and retro soul for an avant-garde, dark rock aesthetic that many have compared to the punk movements of the late 70s. Her new sound is haunting, filled with distorted vocals and lyrical themes that deal with the unaliving of her past self and the pressures of being an industry commodity. This 2026 Rebirth has been met with both critical acclaim and massive confusion. Old-school fans who fell in love with her soul singer persona have taken to social media to voice their concerns, with some even claiming she has been influenced by darker elements of the underground scene. But Courtney seems unbothered by the polarized reception. In rare interviews, she has hinted that this music is the first time she's been honest with her audience. The Jagged era isn't just an album cycle, it's a manifesto. She's intentionally dismantling the Prodigy label, proving that she's no longer interested in being a novelty act. This shift has redefined her career, moving her from the world of family-friendly television to the cutting edge of alternative rock. But this new independence came with a price, leading to a public clash with the very industry that created her. The most recent headlines surrounding Hadwin involve a reported blacklisting by several major media outlets and radio syndicates. The rumor mill has been working overtime, suggesting that her refusal to participate in viral-ready TikTok challenges and her outspoken criticism of the modern streaming model have made her a persona non grata in certain corporate circles. According to industry insiders, Courtney was offered a chance to return to the mainstream spotlight with a high-profile comeback performance on a major network, but she allegedly turned it down because she wasn't allowed to play her new, heavier material live. This refusal to play the game has sparked a massive debate about the state of the music industry in 2026. Is she a visionary standing up for her art, or is she self-sabotaging a once-in-a-lifetime career? Some analysts believe she is being intentionally marginalized by the big players for her rebellious stance, while others see her blacklisted status as a badge of honor that only increases her credibility with her new, hardcore fanbase. The tension between Courtney and the old guard of the music world has reached a fever pitch, making her one of the most controversial figures in modern rock. And nowhere was this controversy more apparent than during her recent, legendary appearance at Carnegie Hall. Breaking the shadow. When it was announced that Courtney Hadwin would be performing at Carnegie Hall for the Clive Davis Gala, the world expected a nostalgic return to her roots. Instead, she delivered what many are calling the most exposed and raw performance in the venue's history. Eschewing the traditional orchestra, Courtney took the stage with a three-piece punk band and proceeded to deconstruct the very songs that made her famous. It was a literal and figurative breaking of the shadow. She didn't just sing, she performed an exorcism of her child star image. Witnesses described the atmosphere as electric and uncomfortable as she stared down the industry titans in the front row. This wasn't just a concert, it was a declaration of war against the new Janis Joplin comparison that has followed her since she was 13. By the end of the night, the comparisons were dead. She had successfully carved out a space for herself as a singular entity, separate from any legends of the past. This performance served as the definitive proof that Courtney Hadwin is no longer a voice for hire. She is a force of nature that cannot be contained by traditional expectations. But as she walks away from the grand stages, her current tour choice is raising even more eyebrows among her critics. The cult of Hadwin. In a move that has baffled her booking agents, Courtney's 2026 tour has completely bypassed the arena circuit. Instead, she is playing the Grime Tour, hitting tiny, sweaty underground clubs across the UK and Europe. These venues, often holding fewer than 300 people, are a far cry from the millions who watched her on television. Critics have been quick to call this a downward spiral, but the data tells a different story. These shows sell out in seconds, with tickets being traded like gold on the secondary market. This cult of Hadwin is made up of a new generation of fans who value authenticity over artifice. In these intimate settings, Courtney is reportedly more engaged than she ever was on a stadium stage. She is building a grassroots movement that doesn't rely on radio play or corporate backing. However, rumors persist about the unconventional atmosphere of these shows, with some attendees describing them as more like performance art rituals than standard concerts. The mystery surrounding her current lifestyle, living in a renovated warehouse and avoiding the celebrity lifestyle entirely, only adds to her mystique. She has traded the world's approval for a dedicated tribe, and in 2026, that might be the most powerful move a performer can make. As the tour nears its end, one final question remains about the future of this resurrected star. We are left with a fascinating portrait of an artist who chose the hard path over the easy one. Courtney Hadwin could have been the next global pop princess, living a life of luxury and predictable hits. Instead, she chose to become a ghost, only to return as a rebel. Whether you love her new jagged sound or miss the girl who won over America's heart, you cannot deny the bravery it takes to walk away from a pre-packaged destiny. As we look toward the end of 2026, the industry is watching closely to see if Courtney's gamble pays off. Can an artist truly survive on authenticity alone, or will the machine eventually find a way to bring her back into the fold? One thing is certain, the voice that once broke the internet hasn't just returned, it has evolved into something far more interesting and far more dangerous than we ever imagined. The story of Courtney Hadwin isn't a tragedy of a lost child star, it's the triumph of a woman who finally found herself in the noise. The only question is, are you brave enough to follow her into the